Sorry about that, I had a disconnect. What was I talking about? Oh yes, I was talking about how bad Garlic Wreath was. Garlic Wreath is bad. Dracula has to choose to take damage to do it. It's okay on Mina because she's weak to Fangs. And it's pretty good with Heavenly Host, because the only thing that counters Heavenly Host is Fangs. So revealing a Garlic Wreath face up makes it where Dracula really doesn't want to play Fangs, so it basically guarantees Heavenly Host. But you know what else is good with Heavenly Host? Basically anything, because Heavenly Host is just good. Like, it doesn't need Garlic Wreath to be good. Like, play it, but it only lasts a combat round. It's pretty bad. I discard it most of the time. Now, let's talk about the guns. I know you're going to want to be like, hey, guns, let's go shoot Dracula and win by killing him with guns. No, don't think that. Remember when I talked about how great strength will break all of your weapons? Well, it does. And these don't even cancel Mesmerize. So the two main cards that Dracula's going to be using to keep from taking damage wreck weapons. In 2nd edition of Fury of Dracula, pistols and rifles didn't even damage Dracula. This is a slight improvement from that. And that's the mindset you have to have towards pistols and rifles. Pistols and rifles are good at dealing with encounters. There's a lot of encounters that require you to reveal weapons to not take damage, but revealing them is dangerous, because then Dracula knows you have them. I'll talk a little bit about that when I get to Heavenly Host. But they're really not good for fighting vampires. And Claws and Plotting are Dracula's 2 worst cards. So Pistol is the card that cancels Dracula's worst cards. I mean, it's better than Garlic Wreath, but you have to understand that. I mean, you want to have like a weapon to protect you from some encounters, but don't think that you can take on Dracula if you have these. Rifle is a little better because it cancels Escape as Bat. As we said, with Escape as Bat, it's really dangerous, and you want to try to keep it from happening, so anything that cancels Escape as Bat is good. Rifle has all of the same problems that weapons have, so keep that in mind, but it's not bad. Now, the other thing you need to understand about guns, and weapons in general, is that they have this effect of vampire suffers 2 damage. How's that an effect? Well, let's compare it to Garlic, which says, if you're the engaged hunter, and the Crucifix, if this cancels this card, which is defective if you're the engaged hunter. The point is, guns and weapons can do damage if you aren't the person fighting Dracula. So they're actually quite good in groups of hunters. But you know what else is quite good in groups of hunters? Just being in a group of hunters, because if you're in a group of hunters, you're in a good position. So let's talk about Holy Bullets, since we're talking about guns. Holy Bullets is not as good as it looks. It seems great. It's like, oh my gosh, 5 damage? That's insane. That's 1/3 of Dracula's health. That's just like, that's so good. Yeah, but it's only good if you're able to play a gun and it not be canceled. That is really hard to do in this game, because both cards cancel the guns and one of them destroys them so that you can never use it again. It's good if you're in a group of hunters, but again, that's a win more situation. So yeah, Holy Bullets can be good, but in groups of a lot of hunters anyway, only 1 Holy Bullets can be used each combat, so having a bunch of hunters with Holy Bullets really isn't worth it. It's a win more card. If you can pull it off, more power to you, but I would generally be afraid of this card. Let's talk about Knife. Now, Knife is when we're starting to get in sort of the mid-tier cards. Knife is actually okay. It does 3 damage instead of 2, which is very good. But it's still a weapon, which means it can help with some, not all, some of the encounters. And it cancels Fangs, which is better than canceling Claws. Again, Claws is kind of Dracula's move if he plans on taking damage anyway. Fangs can be a problem, but it's also predictable, and because this does so much damage, you can really surprise some Draculas with a knife play. So I would say this is better than Rifle because it cancels better things and it does more damage. So yeah, Knife is kind of good at taking out encounters because it's a weapon, and also it can fight a Dracula or a vampire. which is really what knife was in 2nd edition. It was the weapon that was sort of halfway between being something to fight physical threats and halfway into fighting spiritual threats. It doesn't do either really, really well, and there's certain encounters where you have to have a gun, but it's good. It's a middle of the road. I would not say no to a knife. It's decent. So we've talked about all the weapons. Remember, the weapons are canceled by strength and broken by strength. That is insane. You have to be thinking about that when you have a weapon in your hand. And you have to be scared of it. Every single item we're going to be looking at, if it doesn't cancel Mesmerize, and it doesn't cancel Strength, then we need to be scared of that. And that's the biggest problem with Knife. It doesn't cancel either of those things. So, like, if it goes off, great, but the chances of it going off, pretty low. That's 4 cards out of Dracula's however many he has. I should know that, giving a guide. But the point is, it's dangerous to be using weapons. Now, let's talk about Crucifix, since we're moving up into these slightly better cards. Crucifix is a good. I don't want to get into a tier system, but this is good. 3 damage is good. Canceling Mesmerize makes this good. Anything that cancels Mesmerize is good. There's actually not a ton that cancels Mesmerize. And that's because Punch cancels Mesmerize, so you have an innate card that can cancel Mesmerize. But since you can't play the same card twice in a row, having another card that can also cancel Mesmerize is decent. Now, Crucifix is broken by Strength, which is really dangerous. You have to really think about that. With Crucifix, it's really a coin flip if you want to open with this. Because maybe he goes Mesmerize and you burn Dracula and do a lot of damage, and maybe he goes Strength and breaks your Crucifix. The chances of him opening with a Fangs are pretty low. Unless it's a Reckless Vampire. But then he could also go Claws, which means he just does 4 damage to you and you don't do anything, and now he knows you got as a Crucifix. Or he could Plot. Plot is actually really good against Crucifix, because plotting... Yeah, we'll talk about plotting more, but basically plotting is like a combo for a later turn. And Crucifix is really a card that relies on you really thinking that he's going to go Fangs or Mesmerize, which sometimes you can predict pretty well. If it's a Reckless Vampire, or if you're Mina, often you can surprise with that. And this is definitely one of the cards you want to keep hidden for that reason. Because if Dracula thinks you have the Crucifix, it's going to be so much harder to use. Because again, you have to be actually canceling the card. You have to be the one who's the engaged hunter. It's hard to use, but if you pull it off, it's real good. It cancels a lot of things. It's the only thing that cancels Escape is Missed. Canceling Fangs is good. Canceling Mesmerize is good. This has a lot to make it good, but when it doesn't work, it just really doesn't work. Unlike Garlic. Now this is a good card. This is a Dracula killing card. Now I know it doesn't seem that way, but you see this symbol right here? That is a cancel Strength symbol. And that makes this a good card. Now it doesn't damage Strength because, as I said before, nothing that cancels Strength damages Dracula. Get over it. You're going to have to just resign yourself to the fact that Dracula has 2 cards that are just a yeet, I don't care, you don't damage me. With an exception we'll get to. But this is good because it damages Dracula and if he plays 3 things, Fangs, Claws. No, 2 things. Doesn't damage Strength, I just said that. Fangs and Claws, that's quite a few things. But since it also cancels Strength, this basically becomes a dodge that damages. And dodge, we can talk about both of these because it's very similar. Dodge cancels some of the same things, but it doesn't damage. And dodge is already one of the best cards in the game. So you've taken one of the best cards in the game and make it where it can damage. That's really good. And if you have Garlic, you can actually alternate between going Dodge and going Garlic to where Dracula cannot damage you unless he plays Claws. And as we said before, Claws is Dracula's card he plays and if he's going to take damage. And then you go back and forth between Dodge and Garlic, and he's like, fine, I'll go Claws. And then you pull out your weapon that cancels Claws. What Garlic does is it forces Dracula into very narrow decisions where he has to choose between very few things, and that is what you want to be doing as the hunters. You want to be trying to narrow Dracula down to a few choices. Because you are trying to predict Dracula more than Dracula is trying to predict you. And that's important to understand as the hunters. And I'm going to say that again for those in the back. The hunters are trying to predict Dracula more than Dracula is trying to predict the hunters in the combat system. And that's because of strength and mesmerize and some other things. But garlic can help you narrow that down. You know, it doesn't do a ton of damage, but this is a game that's won with inches, not with miles. And that's why I prefer cards like this over cards like Holy Bullets. I mean, heck, I'll take 2 garlics. It's just so good. Garlic and a crucifix? Oh man, you were just gonna like... Dracula doesn't know what you're playing at that point. That one he's like, has to go claws, and when you're forcing Dracula to play claws, you're still gonna be hurting him, and garlic still damages Dracula. And yeah, okay, you take 4 damage, and you do 2 damage. You win by doing damage to Dracula. You have to have that mindset. You have to be willing to die. And this is a card that can help you do that, but it also protects you from strength and fangs. So, like, if Dracula's trying to kill you, it's going to be slow going, because a lot of his stuff just doesn't punch it. Garlic is good. Get garlic. Garlic Wreath, bad. Garlic, normal garlic, good. I should have named this card Holy Water. Why do we have 2 cards called garlic? I don't know. Let's move on to the next thing. No, not that. Yeah, okay. Let's talk about Heavenly Host. This is the best card in the game. This is not for question or up for debate. This is the best card in the game for a ton of reasons, and it's going to take a long time. So sit down, get a hot cup of chocolate. Let's talk about Heavenly Host and why this will kill vampires. It does 4 damage. That's insane. That one-shots Reckless Vampires. This is a card that cancels Mesmerize. That makes it good. This is a card that is not a weapon, which means if they do Strength, guess what you get to do? Still do your 4 damage. If they play Claws, guess what you still get to do if you don't die? Still do your 4 damage. This is one of the best openers in the game, because both of Dracula's cards that cancel don't beat this. Strength, you get to do 2 damage. It's like, oh, you did 2 damage, I do 4 damage. Remember when I said that if you're trading damage with Dracula, you're winning? If you're doing more damage to Dracula than you're taking, you are just the happiest hunter in the world at that point. This is just, it's just so good. This wrecks plotting. This wrecks claws. This wrecks basically everything except for escape cards and fangs. And since Dracula can't escape early, again, it makes it such a great opening. The only thing that really beats this as an opening is fangs, which is a bad opening. Because you're not comboing with Mesmerize. I mean, it's not bad. Really, the only reason you would open with fangs is if you think or know that the hunters have Heavenly Host. And that's where we need to talk about a little bit of how Heavenly Host is beaten. Obviously, it's by fangs. It says it on the card. But it's not just beaten by fangs. It's beaten, put in a trunk, put in the bottom of the ocean, and then have it be circled by sharks by fangs. You don't just get bitten, which is really bad. You also lose Heavenly Host, and then you're also removed from combat. That is so bad. But it's this really, like, it has to be the perfect storm of this comes out the same round that Fangs comes out. And generally, you can predict when Dracula's going to use Fangs. And there's so many things that counter Fangs. Crucifix, Garlic, Rifle, and even, like, Dodge. There's just so many things that counter Fangs that having, like, one card where Fangs is good, it feels almost necessary, because there's just so much stuff that just kicks Dracula's teeth in, pun intended, when he tries to go Fangs. You can usually play around it if you're good. So you're like, okay, alright, Heavenly Host is... It sounds like Heavenly Host is a good card. We're half done with how good Heavenly Host is. Heavenly Host is also used for a card called Consecrated Ground. It's one of the best cards in the game. You just reveal a Heavenly Host, and then you get to block off a space and block Dracula's movement. That's insane, and it becomes more insane the more of these you have. It's also used to cancel Desecrated Soil, which is really good. Also, this thing basically counts as a weapon in terms of how damage works, because of the way this card is written, and it works this way in the digital version. I've tested it, because that's the rule. If you aren't the engaged hunter, you still do the 4 damage. This otherwise covers this entire block of text. If you aren't the engaged hunter and Fangs and all of this stuff happens, then you do 4 damage. You don't have to be the engaged hunter to do the 4 damage. You have 3 hunters come out with 3 Heavenly Hosts. Oh my gosh, that is one cooked Dracula. This Heavenly Host is as good as a weapon. It's as good as a Crucifix in some ways. It is the highest damage dealing card in the game. It lets you block off Dracula's movement. Never, never, never discard Heavenly Host. Understand its limitations, but its limitations is literally one card, other than the escapes, and you know when the escapes are coming, so use it before then. It's just good. It's just a good card. This is the equivalent to the Great Strength. Dracula gets an overpowered card, it's Great Strength. The Hunters get an overpowered card, it's Heavenly Host. Yeah, it cancels both of the cancels. Okay, enough of that. Let's talk about Holy Circle. Holy Circle is not a combat card. Holy Circle is basically escape route, but as a item. It's okay. It's good on Mina. It's okay to have on Van Helsing. You know, it's an escape card. This can be a good card for keeping Dracula from escaping his bat. The fact that it cancels the escape his bat and escape his mist is pretty good. Your normal escape doesn't do that. So that makes it good. You know, if you think of it that way, then it's kind of like, oh, it's an okay card. You know, I'd still rather have a card that does something like a weapon, but it's better than Garlic Wreath. That's going to be sort of a refrain. It's good on Mina. I think it's better than you might think it is, given that it isn't a card that does anything. You know, it's a card for getting out. Sometimes Hunters can get in. It's like, okay, I played 2 Heavenly Hosts. Crap, I don't have anything right now. Snap, I'll try to escape, and then he mesmerizes you, which cancels escape, and you're like, oh dear, and then you're in a bad situation. That's a time when Holy Circle can be nice. It's alright. Alright, let's talk about the basic cards, and in relation, we'll talk about plotting, because what plotting does, which is a Dracula card, it lets you look for a card in your deck of anything you want, that's good. It's good to do. And then later in the game, you can use plotting to cancel one of the basic cards, which is Punch, Dodge, and Escape. So let's start with Dodge. I already talked about Dodge a little bit. It's so good. This is so good. It cancels Strength, that makes it good, which means you're not losing a weapon. Canceling Fangs is good. Canceling Claws is good. If you play Dodge, you will not take damage. Period. 100%. No more words than a sentence that is continuing to go on even though I'm talking. Or because I'm talking. So Dodge is, in that sense, the Hunter's equivalent to Great Strength. You really can use Dodge to try to bait out Dracula's good cards. What you should have probably been figuring out when I was going through Dracula's cards is that Dracula has good cards and bad cards. Now, sometimes he has cards that are good in certain circumstances and other circumstances, and sometimes and every card is good in at least one circumstance, but Dracula has cards that are better in more circumstances. Dodge is a card you can use to bait those out. I know it doesn't have an eyeball on it, but Dodge basically counters, doesn't cancel, but it counters Mesmerize. Because when Dracula plays Mesmerize, you've then forced him to waste a card not blocking a card that you would have played that would have done damage, and now he can't use that card. Now, it actually can be good to open with Dodge and hope to get Mesmerized, because then Dracula's like, haha, I've mesmerized you, and you don't have Dodge, which means I know you can't block Fangs, so now I'm going to Fangs you, and that's when you pull out your knife. That's when you pull out your Crucifix. That's when you pull out your secret cards that cancel Fangs, further illustrating why Garlic Wreath is a bad card, because it's public at the beginning of the round and counters Fangs. No. You want to surprise counter Fangs after purposefully whiffing a Dodge when he goes Mesmerized. That's how you got to be playing Fury of Dracula, with a Dodge play. That's a thing you can do. You can sort of do the same thing with Punch. We'll get into that in a little bit. But yeah, Dodge is good. You won't take damage. Like, the really only good card against Dodge is Plotting. And that's why Plotting is good. Because Dodge, you don't do anything. Plotting lets Dracula get any card he wants, and then, like, on a future turn, now Dracula can use Plotting to cancel your Dodge, and then, no, you get bit anyway. Plotting is really good against Dodge and Crucifix, and basically nothing else, which is why it's a bad... And when I say bad card, I mean it's useful in fewer circumstances. There are times where it could be good to play Plotting, specifically if you think they're going to Dodge. But if you think Dracula's gonna do plotting, that's when you punch him. I love this card, just in theme. I just love the idea of Dracula trying to mesmerize you and then just punch him in the face. That makes me warm in my little heart that is all full of rage against vampires. Punch is really good. It cancels plotting, as I said. It cancels mesmerize, which instantly makes it good, and it deals damage. And not only does it deal damage, it deals damage and you don't have to be the engaged hunter, which, tactically speaking, basically makes it a weapon. So if you don't have a weapon, and you're in a group of a bunch of hunters, do a punch. You'll do a damage, even if you're not the engaged hunter. It's a good way to contribute to the team. Which also kind of illustrates why weapons just are low-tier items, because, like, hunters have a built-in weapon, a punch. Now, punch is also really good because it cancels mesmerize, and it also cancels strength. Or, I should say, it counters strength. But you're saying, what are you talking about? Punch doesn't counter strength. Strength counters punch. It keeps punch from going off, and I get to do 2 damage. Yes. And now you have spent a strength not breaking a weapon, and now my dodge is still on cooldown to cancel your other strength. Like I said, a lot of playing hunters is playing around strength and to a lesser extent mesmerize. Punch does that, and what's great about punch is that it also cancels mesmerize. So if you go punch, if Dracula goes strength, it's bad, you take some damage, but you've wasted his strength, and if he goes mesmerize, you waste his mesmerize, and then you punch him. It's good. It's a good opening move. Even if you have a whole hand of weapons, sometimes punch is a good move. Because again, if you have a whole hand of weapons, you gotta bait out those strengths, and to a lesser extent, those mesmerizes. And the other reason why it's good is that dodge is another good opening move, and plotting is what counters dodge, so punch counters plotting. What beats punch? I mean, fangs, sort of. Like, if Dracula's full health, you actually still take the damage because you heal and then deal the damage. So you heal and then deal the damage, and then punch goes off and hits you. So, you know, but opening with fangs is not that big of a thing. Usually you want to go mesmerize first. I mean, sometimes it can be. Sometimes you want to open with fangs if you think they're going to go punch. Claws kind of beats punch. I mean, you're doing 4 damage and the hunters are only doing 1 damage, but again, you win with inches, and if the hunters are dealing damage, it's hard to see that as a loss. So yeah, punch is a good card. I know it's a basic card and it doesn't seem like a lot, but it's good. It's a good card. Use it. Even if you have weapons, use it. Again, you don't want to reveal. And the biggest thing about the basic cards, and I really need to nail this home, the basic cards don't reveal your hand. They don't let Dracula know what you have, which is a big, important thing to think about. Revealing to Dracula where he knows what you have suddenly lets Dracula start predicting you, and that's a position you don't want to be in. Unless you want to play around it and try to fool him. But you can only fool him if you have cards he doesn't know about. Once Dracula knows about your cards, you need to get the heck out of there, for the most part. That's actually why Holy Circle is good. But yeah, punch doesn't reveal that, because everybody has punch. Everybody has dodge. Everybody has escape. Let's talk about escape real quick. Escape escapes. You want to escape before he gets plotting out, because plotting can cancel escape. I know, oh, it cancels strength. That makes it good, right? No, because you're leaving combat. That's worse than having all your items broken. Well, not really. Because at the end of the day, you're still not doing damage. So in a sense, it's like you're breaking your own items. You need to escape at times. That's more of a strategy question. This is more about combat. Mesmerize is the thing that cancels it, so you have to be careful about that. And sort of play around it. Sometimes you can... Oh, it's so obvious that he needs to escape, so Dracula will obviously go mesmerize, and then you punch Dracula, and it's like, I know I'm only at 1 health, but I'm punching you, and then you do an extra damage, and it's great. The actual minigame between punch, dodge, and escape, like, there's so much shenanigans the hunters can pull off with that. But if that's all you have, you're still going to get hosed. So yeah, that's escape. I'm trying to think if there's anything I didn't talk about. I didn't talk about dogs, but that's a strategy card. Didn't talk about fast horses. Didn't talk about stake. I'll talk about stake a little bit, because you use stake to get rid of certain vampires. It's good. It's better than I thought it was. The more I play, I think it's actually okay. Again, you really have to build your hunters with the mindset of, I don't know what I'm going against and I need to craft it as I go. So you want to have some of these utility items. Being able to kill a vampire without having to fight through a 6 health vampire or reckless vampire if Dracula held onto it is really nice. It's really nice. Avoiding hoax is okay. It's also nice if you're able to pick up Vampire Lair. There's nothing more annoying than picking up Vampire Lair, and Van Helsing's like, quick, okay, who has a stake? Anybody has a stake? I'll trade him Vampire Lair, and nobody has a stake because you've discarded them all, and it's like, ah! So that's annoying. So that is, and I know you're going to be horribly mad when I say this, that is the rudimentary beginnings of understanding the combat system in Fury of Dracula. This rabbit hole goes so much deeper than this. But now you're sort of understanding what you need to play around. I've seen so many people just play badly in the combat, and it's not their fault. This is a really, really hard to penetrate combat system. Understand your secrecy is one of your biggest values as the hunters. Him not knowing that you have Garlic, him not knowing that you have Heavenly Host, him not knowing that you have Knife or Holy Circle. You have to understand how valuable that is. And because Dracula just can't guess you, because the potential options are so huge. You have to be guessing Dracula, and you have to be trying to get into his head. But the skill floor for Dracula is really high. The skill floor for the Hunters is super low. It's really easy to play the Hunters badly. If you play the Dracula randomly, you'll do okay. You really can't play the Hunters randomly. You gotta think through what you're playing. You gotta think through squads. You gotta think through individual play. Man, I could just go on forever. This combat system, I like it. I have complicated feelings about whether or not I think it's balanced. The final thing I'll say, and I know I'm sounding like a preacher where I have multiple final things, is that if you're a fully decked out hunter and you just got the best hand ever, you got a Crucifix and Garlic and a Heavenly Host, and you're going against Dracula, you will win that fight 40% of the time. 40% is enough to win this game. If you're good at the strategy layer and can jump on him multiple times, which you will need to do. But you're still going to lose a lot. Because Dracula's really powerful. And you're basically always going to be fighting him at night. Now, when you are attacking him with 2 hunters, that jumps to like 80%. The power jump from 1 hunter fighting Dracula to 2 hunters fighting Dracula is insane. It is absolutely insane. Because the hunters who aren't the engaged hunter just get to do what they want. They just hit him with the thing, unless they're using Crucifix or Garlic or one of the other cards where you have to be the engaged hunter. But everybody starts with a punch, so you're at least doing that, and surely you're going to have, like, a weapon. And, man, if you have Holy Bullets, too, it just... Oh, man. Dracula will evaporate so fast against multiple hunters. I once, for the memes, tried to fight 4 hunters at once at full health as Dracula, and I was down to 1 health in 2 rounds. That is how fast and how quickly you will get wrecked as Dracula against good hunters. Be a good hunter. Play the game well. Godspeed.